Revenge story with Anjo.
Rain spilled across the cracked pavement of Evergreen Cemetery as Elora Vance, 29, stood alone under a trembling black umbrella. The funeral had emptied fast, mourners disappearing into waiting cars, umbrellas snapping shut. But not her mother. Miranda Vance had texted an hour earlier. Stuck in New York with my business partner. You handle the burial. Business partner. Elora's throat tightened. She knew exactly who that meant. Harlan Dorsey, the charming consultant who had slithered into their lives 6 months ago. Now, while Elora's father lay beneath the mud, Miranda was probably sipping champagne in Manhattan. Fresh horizons ahead, her mother's last post had bragged on social media that morning. Elora clenched the umbrella handle until her knuckles whitened. When the priest's final prayer faded, she turned toward her car. The rain blurred everything, including the grief that had begun to harden into anger. Hours later, sitting in her small Lakeview apartment, she scrolled through her phone and froze. There it was, Miranda and Harlan laughing on a rooftop bar, flutes raised high. While Elora buried her father, they were celebrating. Her stomach twisted. Then her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Message. I'm alive. Come to the cemetery now. It was signed, Dad. Elora's heart pounded so hard it almost drowned out the thunder outside. This can't be real, she whispered. Her father, Jonas Vance, had been pronounced dead just 3 days ago. She'd signed hospital forms herself. But the number, she recognized it instantly. It was his. Without thinking, she grabbed her coat and keys, bolting through the storm. The wipers fought sheets of rain as she sped back toward the cemetery gates. The old oak trees loomed like sentinels in the fog. If this is some sick prank, she muttered, pulling up by the main path. The beam from her flashlight cut through the mist, landing on uneven tombstones and puddles gleaming like glass. Then, a shadow moved between the graves. Elora, a voice called.
Low.
Urgent. Familiar. Her breath caught.
Dad.
The figure stepped forward, soaked coat clinging to broad shoulders. The light hit his face. It was him, alive, eyes wide with warning. Keep your voice down, he whispered, rushing forward. His arms wrapped around her tightly. It's me. I'm here. Elora froze, trembling. How is this possible? Jonas looked over his shoulder. Not here. We have to move now. They ran through the cemetery, puddles splashing beneath their shoes, until they reached a dented silver sedan parked under the trees. Jonas yanked open the passenger door. Get in, he said sharply. I'll explain on the way. The car roared to life, tires spinning over wet gravel before hitting the open road. The rain smudged the skyline as they sped toward the industrial outskirts of Chicago. Elora's voice shook. Dad, I saw the doctors. I saw the death certificate. How? Jonas kept his eyes on the road. Because it was planned. I had to disappear before Miranda finished what she started. What are you talking about? Elora asked, her stomach nodding. He glanced at her briefly, jaw tight. Your mother and Harlan were trying to take everything. Our company, our name. When I refused to sign it all away, they decided I was better off dead. The words hung between them heavier than the rain. Dad, that doesn't make sense. Mom wouldn't. Jonas let out a bitter laugh. Wouldn't? She's been plotting this for months. The company your grandfather built, the Vance Design Group, was her obsession. Harlan convinced her to move funds overseas, said it was an expansion strategy. When I pushed back, they forged documents, tried to get me to sign while I was sedated in the hospital. Elora's chest tightened. You were in the hospital because of the heart attack. Jonas nodded. Caused by their stress. The night before I collapsed, Harlan sent threats. Sign or lose everything. When I refused, they waited until the moment I was weak. Elora whispered, So you let them believe you died? He nodded again, eyes dark. With help from an old friend. It was the only way to expose them. Jonas turned onto an abandoned road lined with factories and flickering streetlights. Your mother showed up at the hospital with pre-filled papers, he said. She wanted me to sign over all controlling shares to her for continuity. When I refused, she called her lawyer and left. but the damage was done. Stress nearly killed me. Then Dr. Leanne Cruz, an old colleague from my early business years, found me in the ICU. She'd overheard Miranda's plan. That night, she switched my files with a deceased patient's record, faked the report, and smuggled me out through a laundry exit. I owe her my life. Elora shook her head in disbelief. So, everyone thinks you're gone. Even me. Jonas' voice softened. I'm sorry, kiddo. It was the only way to protect you. She stared out the window at the dark blur of the city. Protect me from what? From what comes next, he said. Miranda won't stop until she controls everything. They reached an old warehouse on the city's south side. Jonas parked under a broken awning and led her inside. The air smelled of dust and machine oil. We're safe here, he said, bolting the heavy door behind them. A single bulb flickered to life, revealing stacks of wooden crates and rusted tools. I've been staying off-grid. No phones, no cards. He pulled out a weathered laptop from a duffel bag. This, he said, opening it, is every transaction Harlan and your mother have hidden. Elora stepped closer as the screen glowed, showing rows of offshore transfers. $2 million, Jonas muttered. All laundered through shell companies. They've been bleeding the firm dry for months. Elora felt a chill. Why would Mom do this? He sighed. Greed. She thinks the world owes her for the years she stood behind me. He looked up, meeting her eyes. I need your help to bring them down. Elora hesitated. Dad, this isn't a movie. You're supposed to be dead. If they find out you're alive, they already suspect, he interrupted. That's why we move fast. Outside, thunder rumbled again. Jonas clicked open a folder labeled evidence. These files prove everything. I've copied them to a flash drive, but we need physical proof, a contract, signatures, something in her handwriting. Elora folded her arms. And you expect me to just walk into her mansion and grab it? Jonas gave a faint smile. You were always the brave one. She frowned. Brave or stupid? Both, he said, handing her the flash drive. Play her game. She'll invite you soon. Pretend to cooperate. Get close. I'll handle the rest. 2 nights later, Elora's phone buzzed while she sat staring at the rain-soaked skyline. The caller ID read, Mom. For a long moment, she just let it ring. Then she answered. Elora, Miranda's smooth voice purred. I think it's time we settle your father's estate. Come by tomorrow at noon. We'll finalize things properly. Elora swallowed. All right. Good girl, Miranda replied, hanging up before Elora could respond. The next day, she drove to the Vance estate in the northern suburbs, a sprawling modern house with manicured lawns and security cameras blinking under the eaves. Miranda opened the door herself, smiling with professional warmth. You look tired, sweetheart, she said, kissing the air beside Elora's cheek. Let's get this done quickly. The smell of her perfume, cold and floral, filled the foyer. Miranda led her into Jonas's old study, now redecorated in white and chrome. I've updated the firm's ownership paperwork, she said, sliding a folder across the desk. You'll sign as heir to your father's shares. We'll consolidate under one name. It's what he wanted. Elora flipped the folder open. Legal documents. Corporate transfers. But the signature at the bottom wasn't her father's. It was an imitation, close but wrong. She looked up slowly. This isn't Dad's handwriting. Miranda's smile faltered. Of course it is. No, Elora said, pushing the papers back. He'd never sign this. Miranda's eyes narrowed, her tone turning sharp. Grief plays tricks, darling. Sign it. We need closure. Elora rose from her seat, pulse quickening. Closure or control? Miranda's voice dropped to a warning hiss. Don't test me, Elora. Elora backed toward the door. You're forging his name, she said quietly. That's fraud. Miranda's expression hardened. And what proof do you have? She said, voice like ice. You think anyone will believe a grieving daughter over a widow? Elora's eyes flicked to the corner of the room, a small wall safe, half hidden behind a framed family photo. She memorized its location before turning away. I'll think about it, she murmured. Miranda studied her for a long, calculating moment, then smiled again. Do that. And remember, without me, you have nothing. Elora left the mansion without another word, her hands trembling on the steering wheel as she drove away. That night, she called Miles Dre, her cousin and a cybersecurity expert. I need your help, she said. We're breaking into Mom's office. The plan came together quickly. Miles tapped his keyboard inside his cluttered studio apartment as city lights blinked through the blinds. Her downtown office still uses the same network I installed, he said. I can loop the cameras for 10 minutes. After that, you're on your own. Elora nodded, pulling her hair into a bun. We'll be in and out before she knows. At midnight, they parked a van behind Vance Design Group's building, a weathered warehouse turned headquarters. Miles monitored the feeds while Elora slipped inside using her old access card. The corridor smelled of varnish and paper. She whispered into her earpiece. I'm in. Go left, Miles said. The safe's behind the main office. Elora's flashlight flickered across the room's polished floor. Everything looked untouched, except for the faint scent of Harlan's cologne lingering in the air. The safe was exactly where she remembered, hidden behind a painting. She knelt, fingers brushing over the cold metal dial. Try Dad's birthday, Miles whispered through the earpiece. Elora entered the numbers. The safe clicked open. Inside lay files, USB drives, and a thick envelope stamped offshore transfer agreements. She grabbed everything. But as she turned to leave, a red light blinked above the door. Miles, she hissed, alarm system just rearmed. Get out now, he said. Elora sprinted down the hallway, clutching the files. Behind her, the faint whine of sirens began to rise. She ducked through a side exit, slipping into the rain, and ran until she reached the van. We got it, she gasped. Miles sped away, tires screeching through puddles. They parked under the L tracks downtown, hearts pounding. Let's see what she's hiding, Miles said, connecting the USB to his laptop. The screen filled with spreadsheets and encrypted folders. Offshore accounts, shell corporations, forged contracts, all linked to Miranda and Harlan. Elora stared at the screen in disbelief. She really did it, she whispered. She stole everything. Miles looked up. We need to move this fast. Once she notices the breach, she'll come after you. Then we'll expose her first, Elora said. She transferred the files to multiple encrypted backups. But before they could celebrate, her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Return what you took or pay the price, the message read. Elora's blood ran cold. She knows, Miles muttered. They're tracking us. They split up for safety. Elora took the evidence to Jonas at the warehouse while Miles wiped all digital traces. When she arrived, dawn was breaking, light spilling through broken windows. Jonas looked up from a crate, relief washing over his face. You did it? She nodded, handing him the files. He scanned them quickly. This is everything. We can take them down with this. Just then, headlights flashed across the floorboards outside. Jonas grabbed Elora's arm. They found us. The sound of footsteps echoed against the metal door. Open up, a man's voice shouted. It was Harlan. Jonas pulled her toward the back. Emergency exit now. They sprinted through the corridor as the door rattled under impact. Outside, the storm returned. They raced through narrow alleys, puddles splashing underfoot. Behind them, the black SUV screeched around the corner. Get in, Jonas shouted, diving into his sedan. The engine roared. The SUV followed, headlights slicing through rain. Dad, what do we do? Elora yelled. Hold on. He swerved sharply, cutting through deserted streets toward the river. The SUV gained speed, bumpers nearly touching. Jonas braked suddenly, spinning the car sideways. The SUV skidded past, crashing into a lamppost. Seatbelt, he barked. They accelerated again, disappearing into the labyrinth of warehouses. They didn't stop until they reached an old bridge on the edge of town. Jonas parked beneath it, engine idling. Both sat in silence for a long moment, catching their breath. Dad, Elora whispered. We can't keep running. He nodded. You're right. It's time to go public. He opened his laptop and inserted the drive. We'll send everything to the authorities anonymously. Fraud division. They'll trace the offshore accounts. Elora hesitated. Will that be enough? With your testimony and Dr. Cruz's statement, it will. He pressed send. Data bars filled the screen, then vanished. It's done, Jonas said quietly. Now we wait. For the next 2 days, they stayed hidden. The radio crackled with news of Vance Design Group's rapid expansion and Miranda's smiling face on local channels. She's getting bolder, Elora muttered. Let her, Jonas said. The higher she climbs, the harder she'll fall. On the third night, a car pulled up outside the warehouse. A woman's voice called softly. Jonas, it's Leanne. Elora peeked out and exhaled. Dr. Cruz stepped in, carrying her medical bag. FBI contacted me, she said. They received the data. An investigation's underway. Stay low, agents will move soon. Jonas nodded.
Thank you, Leanne.
You risked everything. She smiled faintly. Justice is worth risk. But before dawn, headlights appeared again, too soon. Jonas stiffened. That's not the FBI. Tires screeched. Doors slammed. Elora, hide, he ordered. The warehouse door burst open. Miranda strode in, soaked but composed, Harlan close behind. You really couldn't stay buried, could you? She said coldly. Jonas stepped forward. You stole our company, Miranda. She sneered. I built that brand while you clung to old dreams. You were dead weight. You tried to kill me, he said evenly. Semantics, she replied. Now hand over what you took. Harlan's hand slid inside his coat. Elora stepped from the shadows. Don't even think about it. Miranda's head snapped toward her daughter. Elora? So you were part of this. Elora stood tall. I was the one who exposed you. Miranda's expression darkened. Ungrateful child. After all I gave you. You gave me lies, Elora said. Jonas inched closer. It's over, Miranda. The FBI has the evidence. Her laugh echoed through the warehouse. You think a few files will destroy me? I own half the city's boardrooms. Harlan raised his gun, but before he could fire, red and blue lights flooded the windows. Chicago PD. Hands where we can see them. Sirens wailed as officers stormed in. Miranda froze, realization dawning too late. Within seconds, agents surrounded them. Miranda Vance and Harlan Dorsey, you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy, an officer shouted. Harlan dropped his weapon. Miranda's shoulders sagged. Jonas, she whispered, fury breaking through her mask, you ruined everything. No, he said softly. You did. As they were let out in handcuffs, rain poured again, washing over the scene. Elora stood beside her father, watching silently. He exhaled, shoulders relaxing for the first time in months. It's finally over. Not yet, Elora said quietly. We still have to rebuild. The media frenzy hit by morning. Headlines screamed, Chicago design empire exposed in $2 million fraud scheme. News anchors replayed footage of Miranda and Harlan entering the courthouse, faces blank. Jonas and Elora stayed hidden while attorney Zanderleith, an old family friend, handled the legal fallout. The firm's assets will be frozen pending investigation, he said over the phone. But with your father's testimony, the court can restore ownership. Elora stared out the warehouse window. I never thought justice would look so lonely. Jonas placed a hand on her shoulder. Sometimes peace is quiet, not loud. Weeks later, the federal investigation unfolded fast. Miranda's empire began to crumble as agents uncovered falsified ledgers, offshore accounts, and shell corporations across 3 countries. News vans camped outside her mansion gates, reporters shouting questions. Elora and Jonas stayed quiet, guided by attorney Zander. The truth is loud enough, he told them. You don't need interviews, you need closure. Each day, more evidence surfaced tying Miranda and Harlan to financial coercion, blackmail, and attempted murder. The shockwaves rippled through Chicago's business circles. The once glamorous Miranda Vance, who hosted charity galas and design awards, was now branded a fraud. She'll face at least 20 years, Jonas said one morning, coffee trembling in his hand. But I don't feel victorious, Elora admitted. Just tired. Her father nodded. Justice always costs something. 3 months later, the trial began in the federal courthouse downtown. The marble steps were lined with journalists, microphones angled like bayonets. Inside, Elora sat beside her father as the prosecution played recorded calls, emails, and testimony from Dr. Leanne Cruz. We confirmed that Mr. Vance's records were deliberately altered by the defendants, Cruz said firmly. Miranda sat across the courtroom, immaculately dressed, expression unreadable. When Elora took the stand, she spoke slowly, voice steady. My father taught me honesty was the only real inheritance, she said. But my mother taught me how greed can poison it. The courtroom fell silent. Even Miranda's eyes wavered for a fraction of a second before she looked away. Harlan's defense crumbled first. Cornered by evidence of his offshore dealings, he accepted a plea deal, admitting his role in falsifying contracts. His statement sealed Miranda's fate. The prosecution replayed the forged hospital documents and the recorded confrontation from Elora's earpiece. Each word sliced through the defense's arguments. When Jonas testified, his calm tone carried the weight of truth. I trusted my wife with everything, he said. She turned partnership into warfare. I only survived because someone cared enough to see through her lies. By the time the closing arguments ended, there wasn't a doubt left in the jury's faces. The verdict came after 6 hours of deliberation. Guilty on all counts, the foreman announced. Miranda's body stiffened. Harlan bowed his head. Cameras flashed as the judge's gavel struck. 25 years without parole. The sound echoed through the room like final thunder after a long storm. Miranda turned her eyes briefly toward Elora as bailiffs led her away. You think you've won, she hissed. Elora met her gaze calmly.
No.
I just stopped losing. Outside, the rain had stopped for the first time in days. The sky over Chicago was streaked with pale sunlight, fragile but real. The following weeks were quieter. Jonas officially reclaimed control of Vance Design Group, this time restructuring it as a cooperative with transparent accounts and employee ownership. No more secrets, he said at the relaunch ceremony, standing in the modest new headquarters downtown. Elora watched from the back, hands tucked into her coat pockets. The firm's future now belonged to its builders, not its betrayers. Reporters asked for comments, but she declined every interview. She'd learned that silence was stronger than spectacle. Later that night, she and her father stood on the rooftop, looking out over the city lights. You ever wonder what peace feels like? He asked softly. Elora smiled faintly. Maybe this. Elora moved into a small loft above a coffee shop in Logan Square. Life slowed to a rhythm she could finally breathe with. She freelanced again, branding work for small local firms, nothing flashy. One morning, she received an email from a design magazine requesting an interview. The heir who brought down a dynasty. She deleted it without replying. Instead, she spent her days sketching, drinking burn espresso, and helping her father manage the new design branch focused on sustainable housing. No more marble floors, Jonas joked. Just homes people can afford. For the first time in years, his laughter sounded genuine. Despite the new calm, echoes of the past sometimes returned. Late one evening, Elora walked by the courthouse on her way home. Through the barred window, she glimpsed a familiar silhouette during prisoner transfer. Miranda, in a gray jumpsuit, had bowed. Their eyes met for a fleeting second before guards ushered her forward. No words passed, but that look said everything. A mixture of bitterness, regret, and something close to understanding. Elora turned away before the ache could deepen. Some goodbyes, she thought, never find words, they just fade with distance. By spring, Vance Design Group began receiving quiet recognition again. The press called it the rebirth of Chicago craftsmanship. Jonas rarely gave credit to himself. That's all, Elora, he'd tell anyone who asked. She carried us when I couldn't. But Elora always redirected the praise to the team, carpenters, architects, and designers who'd stayed loyal. We just rebuilt what should have never been broken, she'd say. The first project under the new management, a renovation of an old library on the west side, earned awards for community restoration. "This is what Dad wanted," she whispered during the ribbon cutting. "Something that lasts." Months later, she received an unexpected visitor at the studio, Dr. Leanne Cruz. "Had to see it myself," the woman smiled, walking through rows of handcrafted furniture. "You too did it." Elora hugged her tightly. "We couldn't have without you." "I'm just glad justice worked for once," Leanne said, glancing around. "Your father told me you're considering expanding into education programs." Elora nodded. "A design academy for underprivileged kids. Dad says legacy should lift others, not crush them." Leanne's eyes softened. "He's right. And so are you." That evening, Elora and Jonas sat in their old workshop, now refurbished with fresh paint and open windows. The city hummed quietly outside. "You know," Jonas began, sanding a piece of oak, "when I first built this place, I thought success meant control." He paused, handing her the smooth board. "Turns out it just means freedom." Elora smiled. "Freedom's better, wood to build with anyway." They laughed, the kind that eases years of heaviness. On the workbench lay a small plaque she designed, "Vance Studio, built on truth." Jonas traced the letters gently. "Your mother's gone, but her mistakes don't define us. You do." Summer rolled in with warmth and purpose. Elora launched a mentorship project pairing young architects with community builders. "Design should serve," she told the new trainees. Photos of bright students filled the office wall, alongside sketches of new projects across the Midwest. One afternoon, she received a letter from the state, official confirmation that the company's seized assets had been fully restored to Jonas Vance. She took it to his workshop, smiling. "We're whole again." He looked up, wiping his hands. "No, we're better." For the first time, they both laughed without the weight of survival pressing down. But even freedom carried memory. Every year, on the anniversary of the fake funeral, Elora returned to Evergreen Cemetery. The rain usually came right on time, as if the city remembered too. She'd stand beside the empty grave marker, Jonas Vance, beloved husband and father, and leave a single white rose. "Not dead," she'd whisper with a small grin. "Just wiser." The groundskeeper never asked questions, he'd just nod respectfully. As she walked back to her car, she'd look toward the skyline, the city her family nearly lost. Chicago no longer felt like a battlefield, it felt like home again. One autumn morning, Elora received a call from a young journalist who'd followed the trial years ago. "Ms. Vance," the voice said, "people still talk about your story, how you turned betrayal into a new beginning. What do you want others to take from it?" She thought for a moment, watching sunlight filter through her studio windows. "That family isn't blood," she finally said. "It's whoever stands beside you when the storm hits." The journalist was quiet, then replied softly, "That's powerful." Elora smiled. "It's true." Years later, when the studio expanded into a full academy, a bronze statue was placed in the courtyard, a father and daughter holding a blueprint together. The inscription read, "From shadows, we built light." At the dedication, Jonas, now gray-haired but strong, stood beside Elora as applause filled the air. "We did it," she whispered. He nodded. "No, you did." As the crowd dispersed and evening settled over the Chicago skyline, Elora looked toward the horizon. The rain clouds had parted completely this time. "Peace," she murmured, finally found its shape. And somewhere in the quiet between city lights and memory, she felt the storm truly end.